Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and I just watched the Kansas City Chiefs eke out a Week 1 NFL victory against the Baltimore Ravens at Arrowhead to kick off the 2024 NFL season. Tomorrow, we're going to watch the Philadelphia Eagles and Green Bay Packers in Brazil, which is the first international game of the NFL season. But on Monday night after you got off work, you had a hard day, all you want to do is pop open a nice beer, kick back on the couch, knock them socks off. We get to watch the San Francisco 49ers and the New York Jets in the very first Monday night football game of the 2024 NFL season. This game is essentially the San Francisco 49ers of the West Coast and the knockoff East Coast version of the San Francisco 49ers with the New York Jets led by Robert Saleh, Jeff Ulbrich, who now run a Kyle Shanahan-like system with Aaron Rodgers and many other players that are former Niners on the current New York Jets roster. But to me, this is where you can put last season behind you. The Jets, for one, Aaron Rodgers tears his Achilles, 4 plays into their game against the Bills week 1. San Francisco gets all the way to the Super Bowl and ultimately lose in overtime. This is an opportunity for both of these teams to put both those seasons behind them, move on for how bitter they were and how bad they were. They can finally start anew, start fresh. For the San Francisco 49ers, Frank Gore, the greatest running back in Niner history, being inducted into the Team Hall of Fame on Monday night. So you definitely want to honor Frank Gore with the victory. Funny enough, he played for the Niners and the New York Jets during his long NFL career. But again, this all goes back to, can you put, if you are the San Francisco 49ers specifically, because the New York Jets, their offseason has been kind of positive. It's been Aaron Rodgers is back. You're adding pieces to the offense. You go and you get Mike Williams, a big name receiver, Breece Hall, year number 2. And, things are finally, from what paper would tell you, coming together. Good offseason for the Jets. Meanwhile, San Francisco, again, lose the Super Bowl, rather tumultuous offseason, right? Obviously, the NFL draft comes and goes. Brandon Aiyuk, is he going to get traded? Not going to get traded. Deebo going to get traded? Not going to get traded. Aiyuk ends up resigning over week and a half ago now. Trent Williams just finally returns. Have practice today for the first time. So how can you put all that behind you, not counting Ricky Pearsall got shot a week ago, if that. Like, a lot of negative things or long, tumultuous things, arduous events to get through have happened for the San Francisco 49ers. Can they push through that? Can they, put all that behind them, erase what has been a long offseason, and hopefully, have complete focus on week 1 against the Jets, and then eventually, if all goes well, be playing in the Super Bowl for the second straight season? Can they put that behind them? I think Kyle Shanahan, this falls on him, right? This falls on, can you get your boys ready for week 1? You lost the Super Bowl. The entire offseason is gearing up for this moment. You have Brock Purdy on a contract year. McCaffrey's back relatively healthy, minus a calf injury and kind of an Achilles injury. You have Deebo in the best shape ever, potentially. Kittle's healthy completely. You have all the boys, all the necessary tools to succeed against a really good Jets team. And I think that many people are underrating. I don't buy into last year they were terrible, so this year, same old story. Yes, the Jets have been a perennial non-contender, if you will, but I firmly believe that with Aaron Rodgers at the helm, they are going to win the AFC East if he can stay healthy. The defense is in place. The offense, again, if Rodgers can stay healthy, is certainly in place. You have Wilson. You have Williams outside. You have Breece Hall. You have Conklin. You have a brand new, entirely kind of rebuilt offensive line. The Jets have, on paper, one of the best rosters in football. And for the San Francisco 49ers, this is going to be a massive test for them. You're defending your home field. You're at Levi's. The first time your fans have seen you play since the overtime loss against Kansas City in the Super Bowl. This is kind of the chance to wash that and start anew and hopefully, bring down the house in a primetime victory on Monday Night Football. I think to kind of dive into this game in itself, there are some key matchups to look for. Usually on a preview podcast or show like this, we dive into the numbers. Where can San Francisco succeed? Where are the best odds to exploit the Jets' defense for San Francisco's offense, and vice versa? How can San Francisco's defense stop the Jets' offense? The issue is the Jets' offense has never looked like this, albeit for 4 snaps last year. And the Jets' defense, albeit again, is somewhat similar to what it was last year, was a top 10 unit. This defense kept them in so many games, but to me, all of that leads back to, you want to talk about matchups, offense versus defense. This game is Kyle Shanahan, the master, against Robert Saleh, the Padawan. There are so many rich and deep ties between San Francisco and the New York Jets, many of them simply because Robert Saleh used to coach in San Francisco, now head coach of the New York Jets. Saleh has been stealing players left and right, many of them on defense. Javon Kinlaw's there for a while. A couple of years ago was DJ Reed, who is still there. There's a lot of connections between these two teams. Many of them, the defensive side of things, go back to last year with San Francisco. They bring in Steve Wilks, going to give them a little bit of a different look on defense. Now they're reverting back to that kind of Robert Saleh, the 4-2 defense, kind of more of the wide 9 with the stunts he likes to use with the Jets. They're kind of reverting back to that with Nick Sorensen and Brandon Staley behind them. But again, this all goes back to Shanahan versus Robert Saleh. Which one of these head coaches will best the other? To not be a homer, I think anybody would lean towards Kyle Shanahan. The NFL's an offensive game. The refs, the game itself favors offensive-minded teams. If we're being just blunt, the San Francisco 49ers clearly have the better offense. Christian McCaffrey is better than Breece Hall. Breece Hall is a great player. If McCaffrey's healthy, which he may or may not be 100%, he's an offensive player of the year, right? Brock Purdy, is he better than Aaron Rodgers all time? Not even close. He's not. But this year in this offense, Rodgers is 40 years old. I think at this point, a lot of people would pick Brock Purdy over Aaron Rodgers for a variety of reasons, the main one likely being health. But even on the receiver side of things, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk and Juwan Jennings and Jacob Cowing, the Niners have so much insulation that they should be able to walk away with this game simply based on the offensive firepower they possess. But let's not act like Robert Saleh is not going to pack a punch himself. This Jets defense, although it may not have Hassan Reddick, who, according to Saleh himself, is kind of unknown. His status is up in the air for this game on Monday night at Levi Stadium. The Jets focus on getting hyper-athletic defensive linemen to run stunts, to attack you with every single player from the interior to the exterior. They want to get after the quarterback, and they have attacking linebackers behind them, and Quincy Williams and CJ Mosley. This is essentially the Niners defense of yesteryear, 2002, 2019, just in the green and white of the New York Jets. The Jets defense is phenomenal. Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter, who they just extended to a big deal. Like, the Jets have a phenomenal defense, and I don't want Niner fans to walk into this game thinking, oh, it's the Jets, whatever. The Jets are a darn good team. The Jets, the way they know how to use their defensive linemen, the way Robert Saleh will use players like Javon Kinlaw, like Quinnen Williams, in so many different ways, and they're going to use players, if he's healthy or if he's active, Hassan Reddick, to get out there, and they're going to attack Kyle Shanahan's offensive line in so many different ways, which, thank God, Trent Williams is going to be back out there, whether he's 100% or not. Thank goodness it is not Jalen Moore, who was going to be a nightmare to watch against this Jets defensive line. It's bad enough having Colton McKivitz out there, who is a fine right tackle, but you match that with a subpar left tackle and Jalen Moore, you are just going to give Brock Purdy the biggest task to overcome, which brings us to, thank God Trent Williams is back out there, because with Trent back out there, even if he's 85% ready to go, he's still a massive upgrade over most left tackles in the NFL, and it is going to be imperative that San Francisco's offensive line, we know Kyle Shanahan, they are going to want to run the rock, even if Christian McCaffrey isn't 100% healthy. They are going to want to maintain their identity. Now, that is changing with Brock Purdy's ascension up the ladder of quarterback rankings and how he's played so well the past few years. But deep down, Kyle Shanahan wants to run the rock, 25 plus times, which wasn't or isn't the 30 it once was with Jimmy G and Trey Lance in the building, but it's still there. Shanahan's offense, the wide zone, still operates, on the ground and then utilizes the passing game to then set up more runs and vice versa. It is imperative for the San Francisco 49ers offensive line, from Trent Williams to Aaron Banks, who may or may not play, has the broken pinky, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney getting his first ever start in the NFL, and Colt McKivitz. It is imperative that they can get to the Jets' smaller yet quicker defensive linemen, get them off their blocks, and then let Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle kind of free up the holes in between, take on, Quincy Williams, take on CJ Mosley, take on blitzing safeties, which Saleh will use. This is going to be, it's almost going to be the San Francisco 49ers playing a mirror of themselves. That sometimes is terrifying. That sometimes is a blessing in disguise to see, hey, where can we get better? This is a game where, we are really going to find out, is Shanahan a true master of his own offense, or will Robert Saleh have an answer for what Shanahan's throwing out there? I would like to believe, again, the NFL being an offensive, led offensive style of game nowadays, that Shanahan should have the upper hand. They're even making rule changes the past offseason to help the offense score more points. But I think, if you're Brock Purdy, if you're Kyle Shanahan, you want to get the ball on the ground, because once you get the ball on the ground, you can get play action rolling. You can get those slants over the middle. You can then open up the deep ball for a player like Brock Purdy, which has shown no fear of throwing that downfield and almost, make your quarterback, or allow your quarterback to be the playmaker he's shown to be the last few seasons. Kind of diving deeper into Robert Saleh's defense a little bit more. Saleh loves to play a lot of cover 4, but he also is a player that is or a coach, to leave his cornerbacks in press man coverage, play man to man, and say, look, go out there and beat the receiver one-on-one. Go out there and lock somebody down. Hence, having Sauce Gardner as kind of this lockdown number 1 cornerback, Pro Bowler every single year style of player comes in handy when you can toss a guy out there, whether it's Aiyuk or Deebo, whoever it may be. You trust Sauce Gardner to lock him down every single play. And that kind of brings me, to my next point of Kyle Shanahan really should try to test these defensive backs early. We saw it against Philadelphia last year, albeit that first quarter wasn't very pretty. Shanahan was willing to allow the offense to play through or run through the pass, if you will. Now, I would not do this a lot, but I would not be shocked to see early in the game, the first 1 to 2 drives, Kyle lean on his defense and say, hey, maybe we can get a deep shot early, get the crowd into it, get the offense sparked, and not play this kind of pitter patter and play with your feet. Then the offense explodes in the second half, or the second quarter, if you will. But I would take shots early. Test Sauce Gardner, test Michael Hall or Carter, test DJ Reed. You have the guys that can go deep downfield and go up there and get it. Whether it is Aiyuk, who, if Aiyuk isn't 100%, still an 85% Aiyuk who has been working out, who shouldn't need too much time to get into NFL play. He's not an edge rusher. Doesn't have to use his physical body a lot. It's more cuts and timing. I would like to believe the timing is going to be there between him and Brock Purdy. Whether it is an instant connection, it will be there eventually. And I would like to think they practice today, they'll practice tomorrow, and by Monday, they'll have, 3 or 4 days under their belt to hopefully rekindle last year's magic. Test these guys deep, test Saleh's defense and say, look, we're going to take some haymakers. Yeah, we'll jab you here and there, but sometimes it means that you have to take the deep shot. You have to take the home run pass and see if you can hit it, just to keep the opposing defense honest, because I guarantee you, well, Robert Saleh is going to respect Kyle Shanahan. He's going to respect Brock Purdy and the offensive weapons in San Francisco. He's also going to want to be aggressive, put his stamp, and there's no better way of putting your stamp on a game, almost having what would likely be Saleh's career, win, their most defining victory under him would be beating Kyle Shanahan, the reigning NFC participant in the Super Bowl, his former head coach that he played under, locking down the offense that had 2 MVP finalists and an offensive player of the year, multiple all pros. Like that would be the ultimate, like, prove it victory for them, because last year, although they won 7 games, was kind of a disaster for the Jets. So this is going to be two teams, 2 head coaches, battling back and forth, essentially playing battleship of like, hey, D4, hey, E3, trying to figure out just that one, kill shot, if you will, to put the other away. And if I'm Kyle Shanahan, well, it's not going to be a kill shot. You definitely can sink some battleships early by taking some deep shots in the first quarter to keep the defense honest, because it's only going to open up things for you over the middle of the field. And if you're Christian McCaffrey, who's healthy, or George Kittle, or even Deebo Samuel, some end arounds to the outside, it's going to open up play action, deep crossers. It's only going to allow Shanahan to do much, much more, which, if he has full disposal of the offense at his hands, that's almost the end of the line for any defense they're facing. But within that matchup brings me to, I think, one of the most intriguing matchups, key matchups of this game. That is Sauce Gardner against Brandon Aiyuk. I'm going to assume that is going to be the matchup 99% of the time. Now, we aren't really sure what Aiyuk's snap count will be in this game due to the holdout or hold in, but my assumption would be he plays over 80% of the snaps, if not 90%. Aiyuk doesn't feel like that player that, even if he is tired, wants to come off the field. And it is going to be a pleasure to watch Aiyuk and Sauce Gardner battle it out. I mean, Sauce Gardner really doesn't have a weakness in his game, despite what Seattle Seahawks fans might think. Tariq Woolen is nowhere near the player Sauce Gardner is. Sauce Gardner is in the upper echelon of cornerbacks in football. You can even argue they're playing the number 1 cornerback in football this Monday. I think having a player like Brandon Aiyuk to not just keep his attention, that being Sauce Gardner's, but battle it out. Let's see if Aiyuk can truly be that number 1. We've seen him, crush and just dice up Trevon Diggs. Will that same thing occur in this game against the Jets, where Diggs isn't really a cover guy, he's more of a ball hawk, playmaker? Sauce is kind of all those things where it kind of harkens back to Revis Island with the New York Jets of like, he'll lock you down, but he's going to be feisty and angry, not dirty, but he's going to want to get his hands dirty, and he's going to make you know it once he shuts you down. And if you're not careful, he will also pick you off. So that is going to be a battle of wills. And, had it not been for the hold in of Brandon Aiyuk, we're talking about, one of the best matchups maybe all season in regards to cornerback and receiver. If I'm going to be honest with you, if Aiyuk can simply just be a 3-catch guy in this game, I have much more confidence in a player like Deebo Samuel having a phenomenal game against the New York Jets. Obviously, the Jets are trying to replicate a Deebo Samuel-like player in their own offense, drafting Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky this past draft. I don't blame them. Like, why would you not want to do that? But there is nobody else like Deebo Samuel, and we've heard all offseason, we've seen all offseason the great shape he's in. He looks faster, stronger, skinnier, new number this year. This is now almost a fresh start. They just redid his contract, so he's not going anywhere. It feels like the trade of Deebo Samuel is kind of off the table, it feels like now. They got both their receivers locked in. While Aiyuk isn't going to be 100% most likely, and will probably be, for the most part, locked up or locked in with Sauce Gardner, it's up to Deebo to then take on DJ Reed and Michael Carter and almost take on this secondary himself. Yeah, you have Juwan Jennings, but even Juwan has the ankle injury. So, Deebo is the only true, healthy, not limited, if you will, receiver. And this is a big game for him. Last year he was hurt in the Super Bowl. He was hurt in the NFC title game, the divisional game. I'm not one of those fans or, podcasters that turn on him, but, fans had a bitter taste in their mouth because of how the season ended. I think for him, this kind of a prove it year for Deebo. Isn't the last year of his contract, but, you could argue that Deebo Samuel has not lived up to the contract he was given. And a couple years ago, he said that, his tape was trash in the first year of his deal. Well, his tape was not trash last year. I can guarantee you he's saying there's so much more I can do for the offense. And then again, when Aiyuk isn't, 100%, good to go because of the hold in and Juwan's nursing an ankle injury, okay, you got to be the guy. And even McCaffrey with the calf and Achilles injury, Kyle's going to utilize Deebo Samuel so much in this game to keep guys fresh, sure, but also, be a game wrecker. We're going to see end arounds and slants and all these things we've come to love from Deebo Samuel. And Saleh's going to have an answer. I think the Jets have one, probably a top 10 linebacker room in football. It's not going to be as simple as just let Deebo run, but it's going to be, how do you utilize him? When do you pick your points? Because the Jets are going to be ready for him. There's a really good tackling secondary, really good tackling and attacking linebacker room in New York. How are they going to utilize Deebo? I think, he's going to be able to brutalize, if you will, DJ Reed and Michael Carter. My question is he going to be enough if players like McCaffrey and Aiyuk and Juwan are limited in what they can do? Yeah, Jordan Mason, sure. And even when you have star players like Aiyuk or McCaffrey, again, 85% of them is better than none of them. You have to wonder, okay, what can the only healthy guy outside of Kittle really give us? I'm expecting big things from Deebo this year. And I really believe that we're going to see, a big game from him in week 1. He needs this, and San Francisco may need it well because they have guys that are hurt. They had guys that held in for new contracts. Deebo's been there from day one. He wasn't taking practices off. This is now a time for him to put all the offseason work he's done on full display, and I'm hoping he can do that against New York Jets, and I'm assuming that he is going to be so amped up. That boombox coming out of the locker room with Trent Williams back, it is going to be one of the, if I'll throw you back to one of the Bay Area terms, it's going to be hyphy. It's going to be lit and crazy. It is going to get me off of my couch, ready to run through my wall from SoCal all the way to Northern California. I cannot wait to see Deebo on that field next or this Monday. Man, football is so close. Already happened tonight, but Niner football is a couple of days away from being back. I think, when you talk about, football, a lot of the conversations are quarterback against quarterback. So let's indulge those people. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers in San Francisco has so many ties. Rodgers, I don't think, has won a regular season game against the Niners since what was it, 2021, when it was like the Trey Lance, Jimmy G dual quarterback thing. Josh Norman and Devontae Adams kind of iced the game late, and it was just a disaster of a game for San Francisco. Everybody was hurt. But even then, I think that's his last win since like 2017. Been a long time since Rodgers actually beat San Francisco. And obviously playoffs come into mind of like San Francisco owns Aaron Rodgers' lifetime, despite the draft talk of 2005. They didn't take him. Alex Smith, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you're tired of it. I'm also tired of it. But that is to say that I think, while Aaron Rodgers may be 40 years old, he is one of, and still one of the best passers of the football in the NFL. When talking about Brock Purdy, you never want to knock him. He's not the best thrower, but he's a good one. He isn't the most mobile, but he's pretty, he's pretty mobile. He's pretty quick on his feet. He's a playmaker that can actually win you games with his legs. Where Aaron Rodgers now at the age of 40 is more of a pocket passer, and he's more of a, in the details, in the weeds of, how can I put this pass exactly where it needs to be without having, to scramble in the pocket left or right. That's how he tore his Achilles last year. Now, I'm not sure that's because of age or just because of, unluckiness, but the Niners with Aaron Rodgers behind a new offensive line, it's going to be important to get to him because he is somewhat of a statue. He'll run a little bit to his left, a little bit to his right, but I want San Francisco to not hurt Aaron Rodgers, but you have to test that mobility. You have to get in there, wreck shop, make him move off of his spot to see, okay, who are you at the ripe age of 40 years old? I don't know about you. I'm 27. When I fall down, like a couple days ago, I was in my bed. I fell out of the bed. My back hurt, and I was like, oh, I can't do anything. I'm 27. How do you think Aaron Rodgers might feel? Takes a few bumps, takes a few hits. Again, don't hurt him on purpose, but you want to be able to test his physical limits at the age of 40. Is it all arm? Are there some legs left in the tank for Aaron Rodgers? You have to be able, and I think San Francisco more than ever is able to do this because they have Mooney Ward and Diamador Lenore, and like the Jets receiver room does not scare me. Their offensive weapons outside of Breece Hall, I don't think really scare anybody. I get Wilson's there. He's a first round pick. There are good things to say about him. I like him a lot, but I think San Francisco's defense has the tools in place, whether it be a cornerback or a linebacker or a safety. They have the tools in place to limit the weaponry that the Jets have. The question is, what is Aaron Rodgers in a Jets offense look like? We don't really know. And I think, it only helps San Francisco that Nathaniel Hackett is their offensive coordinator still. Essentially, it is the Hackett-Rodgers regime in the offensive coordinator room. Is this offense going to be a Rodgers, Matt LaFleur hybrid offense where they're doing things that are, they are, an outside zone, a wide zone scheme, and they're doing things under center and they're shotgun and they're doing things that you see Matt LaFleur and Rodgers that they did a couple years ago with Green Bay that was pretty successful, albeit had a limit to it? Or is it going to be more of a McCarthy Rodgers offense where, McCarthy calls a play and Rodgers essentially has a full run of the offense? If you change whatever you want, and you're going to see Rodgers pick a receiver. In that regime, it was Devontae Adams, where they were essentially a almost 10 plus catch a game duo because they had the greatest chemistry almost of all time. They were phenomenal together. I don't think he has that just yet in New York, but if he's going to have somebody, it'll be Wilson. So it's really important for Mooney Ward to lock up Wilson or wherever he's playing. Isaac Gatum, Bernardo Green. There are players that have to step up, sure, but I think it's hard to pinpoint what the Jets are going to do offensively because we didn't see it last year. That is the one thing that San Francisco may have an idea of. Go back to the Rodgers, LaFleur, Packer, era regime, but no one saw Hackett and Rodgers together last year with this weapon. Like, you don't know what it's going to look like. So while they're not going to be shocked and surprised, the NFL is a lot of similarities through every single team and scheme, but it's going to be okay. Well, yes, we have an idea. Like, no one really knows what the offense will look like outside of the Jets, if we're being honest. But this is a big game for the Niners to not just slow down Aaron Rodgers, sure, but if you can get to him, get pressure, he's not been taking hits on that Achilles. You want to knock him down, taking a few shots. You don't want him to get settled in. Rodgers can still annihilate, kill your defense, and pinpoint you like a sniper with the arm he has, albeit with less weapons that he used to have in Green Bay with Jordy Nelson and Devontae and Greg Jennings almost a decade and a half ago, which, whoa, long time ago. But on the Brock Purdy style of things, I think for Brock, it's not like he's going to be shocked in what he sees. He sees in a defense that he's played against every single day in practice. Doesn't mean it's easy, because it's not. It doesn't mean that Saleh's not going to have tricks up his sleeve, but I think, in a weird way, facing Steve Spagnuolo with the Chiefs last year in the Super Bowl is actually going to help Brock Purdy a ton, facing stunts, facing things he hasn't seen before. Like Brock Purdy now and coming into year 2 as a full-time starter and year 3 as a whole, or year 4, excuse me, like he really, really, he's kind of seen it all, if you will, from a base standpoint. I think Purdy in this game, it's going to be, if I were to choose, a stat line, if you will, I think he'll have 28 passing attempts, probably have about 240 yards, probably a touchdown or two. I wouldn't be shocked if he throws a pick, he forces a play early, gets picked off, no harm, no foul. He tried something, that was the point of it. But you also seen Brock, and one of the great things that he's good at is, despite the risks he takes, despite, some of the passes he may force, he's surprisingly safe with the football. Like, you see a lot of quarterbacks that will, they have great mobility and they have, the rocket arm, and they'll force throws where you question, I don't mind, take Josh Allen, for example. And Josh Allen's a great quarterback and he can make the throws, 85% of the time, but there are certain games where he gets a little trigger happy and is overthrowing receivers, throwing picks, forcing throws in triple coverage, where it's funny, we don't like that, or we like that when Josh Allen does it, but when it backfires, we're like, oh, there's Josh Allen. Whereas Brock Purdy, doesn't, or so far at least, hasn't had the drawbacks of turnovers that Josh Allen has had. Now, those can come if he keeps forcing throws into bad windows, but, Brock, weirdly enough, despite not having the greatest arm, despite not having, the greatest physical traits, somehow is able to make throws that elite quarterbacks make. And so, I don't know about you, but I'm not walking into this game fearing really any defense or what Saleh may throw at Brock Purdy. I think Kyle will put Brock in the best position to succeed. I think, there may be some hindrances on offense for Brock not having the full array of weapons. You can get the hold in, McCaffrey with the ankle and Achilles, Juwan with the ankle injury. Obviously Ricky Pearsall got shot in the chest. Not going to have him out there, albeit he wanted to practice this week and wanted to play against the Jets, which don't play yet. Please be healthy and safe and live a healthy life and don't risk anything. But, even if it is Chris Conley, Jacob Cowing, I hate to say this because it's almost like a diss towards the Jets, but it's really not. It's it's more of propping up Brock Purdy. I think Brock is in for not regression, but I think we are going to see parts of his game. Well, I wouldn't expect stat lines of 400 passing yards and 6 touchdowns, these crazy, Mahomes or Joe Burrow, Josh Allen type games. I think, we are in the market where we're in the realm of, okay, can Brock give us a consistent 280 yards and 2+ touchdowns per game? And last year, that's basically what it was. This year, I think, we are in the realm of can you, well, not win the MVP, but just can you almost be more precise with the throws and be more efficient, which is hard to say because Brock was the most efficient quarterback seemingly all of last year. So, not to say there isn't room for Brock to grow. It's just more so of I don't care what Saleh throws at him. Brock usually, or in previous past couple years, has had an answer for it, which is so surprising for a young quarterback like himself. Obviously, Mr. Relevant, but, this is a big game for Brock in a way of, a lot of people, whether it's Colin Cowherd, people in the fan base, other people in the media, they're picking the Rams to win the division. And I think this game, the first kind of 5 or 6 games of the year are really important for San Francisco, like any other year, to get off to a hot start. Week 1 against the Jets at home, then you go to Minnesota, you go to the Rams, you play the Cardinals, play the Patriots. You win this game, you should beat Minnesota on paper, right? The Rams game will be tough for sure, but you can win that game. You should win that game based on your roster on paper. Then it's the Cardinals. That game should be a W. then the Patriots. That game should be a W. Now you win this game, which will be your toughest opponent for the next, I don't know, month and a half, if you will. Like you're setting yourself up to almost avoid, even if you have like last year a 3-game losing stretch, you're going to be able to avoid falling to second place or falling too far behind you can't catch up. So this game is really important for the Niners as a whole. You wish Trent and Aiyuk didn't hold out and hold in. You wish you were 100% with Juwan and Banks and Garendo and McCaffrey and even guys like Yetur Gross-Matos and D Winters. Like you are going to have to run out there with Devondre Campbell and Demetrius Flanagan-Falls and Curtis Robinson, which, that's not the greatest unit outside of Fred Warner, but, it'll be also interesting to see, what San Francisco does with Talanoa Hufanga, because on the depth chart, I'll be unofficial, he was a starter. And I wouldn't expect him to play. I think Adam Schefter said once Tracy Walker got signed to the practice squad, the expectation was he was going to be elevated for week 1. So it seems like, it's going to be Jair Brown, George Odom with Mustafa mixed in. They're going to test. They're going to test San Francisco deep as they should. I love Jair Brown and I like George Odom. Not the greatest, deep ball protectors. So, there could be some fireworks pretty early in this game. I think, we are going to see players like Malik Mustafa. And if he's in there, and on the Jets, I'm pinpointing, take shots at him, make him beat us. Let's test the young defensive back. If Bernardo Green plays, Aaron Rodgers loves to target, as any veteran quarterback should, rookie cornerbacks. Make them prove to you they can beat you. The same thing almost goes for Brock Purdy. Okay, like you have Sauce Gardner. I've also played against the Seahawks and the Rams and the Chiefs. And like, there's nothing that Brock Purdy can look at in the eyes and fear. I think that's one of the greatest traits he has is he knows who he is, confident who he is. Yeah, he'll have a bad game here or there, but like there's people talking about, we can make Brock Purdy look like Christmas Day against the Ravens, Brock Purdy all the time. It's not the case. I think Brock has done more than enough to prove his worth financially, but also as a quarterback, respectfully. Like, you look at Brock Purdy's game, and I'm still not understanding the disrespect he gets. I get it, Mr. Relevant, but like, what more does the kid have to prove outside of winning a Super Bowl, which he almost did, less than a year ago, 7 months ago, so I think in this game, it's not really going to come down to quarterback against quarterback, which some people want to make it to be. On the marquee, it'll be Rodgers against Purdy, but in reality, it'll be, defense against defense. It'll be, which defense almost blinks first. I think, the way San Francisco has carried over into the offseason, this defense has never been better. Like, all of the injuries are essentially on the offense. Sure, D Winters being not practicing hurts. Yetur Gross-Matos with the knee injury not practicing hurts. But, you have Leonard Floyd. You have an improved defensive line. Malik Collins. This to me is going to be a game where even if Christian McCaffrey can't run that much or is limited, although I think he'll be active for most of the game. He even said in the preseason, I think against maybe in Tennessee, but it could have been against the Saints, that if there was a game that mattered this week, I'd be playing. So I don't think the injury is, that serious, although McCaffrey getting older, Achilles, ankle, you never want that to be on the injury report. It certainly worries me, but I think that McCaffrey is healthy enough to be out there for the majority of the snaps, just praying to God the Achilles and the calf hold up. But I think this game will come down to who can stop the run, who can not blink first. Again, like I said earlier, because the Jets have a boy of their own and Breece Hall, like Christian McCaffrey, San Francisco's boy. The Jets have, Breece Hall, who's just a dominant pass catcher, dominant runner through the lanes. He goes through the tackles on the outside. Like, his ascension was awesome to see last year. I'm sure he carried a handful of fantasy football teams last year. He's great. And I think, one of the biggest tests this year for San Francisco's defense is, have you done enough to improve the run defense? Last year was really bad. Lions, Packers, playoff games, not great. Later half of the year wasn't great. You brought in players like Malik Collins. You brought in Jordan Elliott and Leonard Floyd, hoping to give you more consistency up the front or on the front seven. Now, you have good tackling cornerbacks and good tackling safeties. The question is, can your defensive line fill the holes and give effort 100% of the time? I think it can, but I know that, again, this is going to come down to, which running back almost has the better game, right? Where, Rodgers may be these long, drawn-out drives, and Breece Hall is carrying the ball a lot, whereas San Francisco and Purdy may be faster drives, faster scoring. It's going to come down to, can San Francisco really stop the Jets' rushing offense? The Jets don't have a phenomenal run offense, but they have a really good running back, and I think with the improved offensive line, it's not just new tackles Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith. It's Elijah Vera Tucker's back. They're gonna want to run the ball. And I think if you're Robert Saleh, while yes, you want to trust Aaron Rodgers, yes, you're going to give him the reins of the offense, but you also realize he's 40 years old. Like I already said earlier, like you have to run the football. And I'm not sure, without seeing the offense, is Rodgers willing to do that, willing to run the football 25 times a game to preserve himself? I'm not so sure, which may in return help San Francisco's run defense look better than it actually is, or give them a breather, because I think at this point in time Rodgers wants that freedom. So I think he'll want the ball in his hands a lot more, or at least in similar ways in which it was later in Green Bay. So we'll definitely see how that goes. But I think again, it's so hard to pinpoint areas in which San Francisco may have problems, but my eyes are certainly going to be on the run defense in this game. It's not just about losing Javon Kittle on Eric Armstead. It's about how does Fred Warner and Devondre Campbell play the run? How does players like Demetrius Flanagan-Falls, who was almost cut, or Curtis Robinson, who is like a third-string linebacker, those are areas in which Rodgers will attack you. It's areas in which Hackett and Rodgers want to try to abuse, if you will, against your defense. They'll take shots over the top, sure, against Malik Mustafa and George Odom. Why wouldn't you? But we all know almost every game is won in between the trenches. And I think for these two head coaches, it's almost like a point of pride of, which one of us can pull away and win the battle of the trenches. And it's almost polar opposites of Saleh's, the energy, screaming, flexing, Shanahan's, while he's been yelling more often, much more calm and composed and talking. And, it's very different play styles and coaching styles. Whereas, or in this game, it'll definitely be, a protege against, the master, if you will, matchup, which is so fun to watch. But diving deeper further into it, it's, Fred Warner will be on his stuff. He's an all-pro. If you want to point to holes in the Jets defense, I think San Francisco should be able to run the football. I also think, again, Deebo Samuel, the quick passing game, should benefit San Francisco a lot. But flip that, I think, again, the Jets should be able to and will try to attack Devondre Campbell, try to attack the linebacker room, not named Fred Warner. But even then, they'd be smart. If it was me, I'd run the football 3 straight times and say, stop me. Dare you to stop me. Because last year you couldn't stop anybody. We watched Aaron Jones and Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery have almost, these 100-plus yard games, and it was like, oh my goodness, they can't stop a soul. And, Breece Hall is better than Aaron Jones. This team struggled against, backs late in the year. It's like, okay, if you're the Niners, you're kind of like, we need to, they reevaluated the defense, sure, but the team itself, the players themselves, it's like, look, we knew it was a problem last year. We fired the defensive coordinator. We have to prove that decision correct. Nick Sorensen, I think, his first career game as defense coordinator, I think he's going to want to go get the football. I think him being the, the ball skill guy, if you will, the attack the ball coach he was under Shanahan and Wilkes and even Saleh and DeMeco Ryans, it's like, okay, that doesn't just go away because you change rules. I think we are going to see some risks taken to either sack Aaron Rodgers, get the ball back on third down, force turnovers, force takeaways. Like, this is going to be, while the Jets defense is nasty and aggressive in themselves and they'll use stunts and whatnot, I think we'll see Sorensen, pull some tricks out, get more aggressive. You know, don't be shocked if you see Lenore blitz a handful of times, or you see, three safety sets and it's Mustafa or Ufunga in the box and they're blitzing and you're trying to make plays and force Rodgers to pressures and force Aaron throws. Like those things are going to happen because they have to happen. It's going to be a battle of wits, and again of who blinks first. Thankfully, I think San Francisco has the upper hand when it comes to edge rushers. The Jets have a good edge rushing group. They really do. They definitely want to, give a player like Reddick, if he's going to be out there, reps. But even McDonald, the first round pick a handful of years ago, trying to find him room and snaps to play, and they want to see what he can do. But I think San Francisco, sometimes we try to overanalyze football a lot, and it comes back to bite you in the butt. I think, we're in this age of analytics and PFF, and sometimes you just point to a roster and go, they're better. I do that when I think of the defensive end group of San Francisco compared to the Jets offensive line. Morgan Moses playing right tackle, who I think is a good right tackle, definitely underrated. I think the Ravens trading him, you saw tonight against the Chiefs, probably a mistake in doing so. Definitely need that depth at the position, but he's going to start for the New York Jets. And I think, my mind goes to, Nick Bosa. And Nick Bosa in this game, I think he was probably a little upset about how last year went. I think there was a point of, I didn't play up to my standard in this game, and I think, or in last year. And I think, being the reigning defensive player of the year coming into last season, I think he wants to reclaim that crown and almost prove to not himself, but just be like, look, like I ain't leaving. I ain't going nowhere. Not that we forget about him, but there almost seems to be some disrespect at Nick Bosa's name at times when talking about, TJ Watt and Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, and all those guys are great in their own right. But in that same breath, sometimes Nick Bosa becomes the fourth talked about edge rusher, which I get it. He's a quiet guy, but he goes about his business and just annihilates and tears up right tackles and left tackles. I think Nick Bosa is on a mission this year to, even if it isn't win Defensive Player of the Year, it's to almost reclaim that crown as I'm the best pass rusher in football. And I think in this game against Morgan Moses, who was talking about, again, making Brock Purdy look like Christmas Day, Brock Purdy, because he was there last year with the Ravens, I think that may come back to bite him. That exact comment won't, but I think that mindset may. It's more of like, worry about Nick Bosa, brother. Like, you have a bigger task at hand than talking about Brock Purdy. You got to deal with, a more in shape Javon Hargrave who can control the interior better than last year. You have a more healthier and likely better pass rusher Malik Collins and Eric Armstead. You're adding in Kevin Givens and Jordan Elliott, who are kind of run-stopping defensive tackles. Then you're talking about, again, Nick Bosa and Leonard Floyd, and it seems like Robert Beal Jr. and, if future Gross Matos goes, Sam Aquanu, which isn't great by any means. I'd love to add some people in that room, but, Morgan Moses, I think, is going to have his hands full. I think last year we didn't see Nick Bosa get a sack until week 3 or 4. I would not be shocked. And Bosa is one of these players that the better the quarterback, the more motivated he is to go sack them. In previous years was Baker Mayfield, but Nick Bosa loves to sack players like Lamar Jackson and loves to sack players like Mahomes and Matthew Stafford. And I think in a big game like this, Nick Bosa, I think, will have his, full moon werewolf, wolfman eyes out, being like, I cannot wait to get back on the football field. He had an entire offseason. I think he'll be ready to go in what is sure to be a phenomenal finale to week number 1 of the NFL season. Again, key matchups: Aiyuk against Sauce Gardner. If I was to be a gambling man, I think Sauce Gardner wins that. Just the hold in, although it doesn't bother me, it doesn't make me say Aiyuk's not going to have a good year. It's just, I would like to give him one more week to be out there, which is why the hold in kind of sucks. But Aiyuk may have done that to himself. I think, Purdy against Rodgers isn't the big story. I think it's Purdy against, Saleh, and Rodgers against Sorensen, I think, Deebo Samuel may be the biggest X factor in this game on San Francisco's offense. Whereas, we didn't even talk about really Christian McCaffrey or George Kittle. I wouldn't be shocked if we see George Kittle relegated to being an inline tight end again, simply because Saleh's aggressiveness. Kittle may be this offense's third or fourth option at times, but sometimes he is the most important. I think, having George Kittle aiding Colton McKivitz on the right side is going to go a long way into keeping Brock Purdy upright and healthy against the Jets, who, again, want to get after it, are going to do stunts. I think we are going to see a lot of George Kittle in the backfield against the Jets on Monday Night Football. If you're playing fantasy football, I would not play him in that game unless you absolutely have to. But who am I to say? I started Mark Andrews tonight and didn't go very well. First off, shout out Isaiah Likely for a near 3 touchdown performance, I think, against the against Kansas City Chiefs. What a great, almost near game time touchdown as well. So, what do I know? But I'm hoping in this game we see a new Niners defense and a very similar Niners offense. I think, in a weird way, San Francisco has a chip on their shoulder, but also a massive target on their back. A lot of the conversation is, can you get past the offseason? Can you get over the Super Bowl? And people are predicting a hangover, if you will. And, in my predictions, I didn't have them going or winning the Super Bowl, but I'll gladly be wrong on that. And that starts on Monday. That starts, you go out there and you kick the Jets' butt. You knock the wings off of them and send them back to New York crying. That's what you want to do, to almost make the NFL, the fans, the media, remember what you did last year. Sometimes we tend to forget the media has a very short mind. It's more of the immediate, what's happening right now at this exact moment. And sometimes you forget San Francisco ran through the entire league outside of the Browns, in which they almost won that game, and the Vikings, which they almost won that game. And, the Bengals and the Ravens are the only two teams that really took a pounding to them. Whereas they won close games against the Packers and the Lions and almost won the Super Bowl. I get that's a long, grueling season. Can you do that again? Well, those questions start to go away every win you have, and that starts week 1. Questions about Aiyuk and Trent and Purdy and McCaffrey's health and whatever it may be, those questions start to diminish and dwindle every win you get. You have to win week 1 against the Jets. It's not a must win, but it's almost like you have to win this game to almost get your mojo back, to get right, to, believe your own hype. And I think San Francisco firmly believes, and rightfully so, that when it's all said and done this year, they are going to be hoisting a Lombardi trophy. That quest, that search, that journey, that goal starts in winning week 1. You smack a team in the mouth like the Jets, a defense in the mouth, you beat them by 10 plus points, the NFL will say, why did we ever think the Niners were going to have a hangover? Why did we ever think about that team that's that stacked, that has all pros everywhere? They weren't going to be as good as last year or not win the division. That starts on Monday. I am so pumped to finally watch the red and gold play again. It also helps that, it's a home game, not again MetLife Stadium. Thank God we're not going to New York this year. Thank God. But it's going to be awesome. If I were, like I always do after every single podcast, previewing a game, can I give you a prediction? I don't think this game's going to be too high scoring. I think it'll be 27-23. San Francisco gets the win. Jake Moody will get a field goal. I think Deebo Samuel may have himself a 2-touchdown game. Or if he doesn't, it'll be a very heavy Deebo game where McCaffrey or Mason, are in the game getting touchdowns in the red zone. This game is going to be fun. This is a game you want to watch, barring health. This is a game where, there's so many ties between the organization, the roster themselves. But, this is potentially, if all goes well for both teams, And this could be a Super Bowl matchup in week one. You hope to get those every single year. Usually does not happen. You are potentially looking at one of those to end your week one. I'm hoping it's as good of a game as I'm kind of hyping it up to be. I'm really excited to watch Malachi Corey, Jacob Cowing, and watch the All Pros on both sides get at it once again. Should be the best game of the week, unless some crazy nuts week one game happen where it's like the Cardinals and Buffalo Bills are 45-42 in the fourth quarter, tied with 10 seconds to go, and whoever's going to make a game time field goal to go to overtime. Unless that happens, it should be a phenomenal ending to week one, which kicked off tonight in a really great game, Ravens and Chiefs, which saw Kansas City win once again, which, shocker, not shocked whatsoever. But if you liked what you listened to or watched today, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave that review on the podcasting platforms. Give us 5 stars. Put anything you want in the comments below on YouTube. Tell us how you think this game will go. What is your prediction for this game between San Francisco and New York? If you will, follow us on social media at 49ers_access. That is the X or Twitter. The Instagram is 49ers.access for injury updates, latest news. You're going to want to follow us on both those social media platforms. And if you want to buy tickets still to that game or any game this year, go to SeatGeek.com, find your tickets. Hopefully they're green. That means it's the best seat available. Put in promo code 49ERSAccess, 49 ERS ACCESS to save yourself $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek.com. It'll help pay for a beer. It'll help pay for parking. And look, those games are expensive. They just paid Trent. They just paid Aiyuk. They gave McCaffrey a raise. They're going to get Purdy a raise. Those tickets are only going to get higher and higher and higher. If you can save some money now, why not? Why would you pass up on the offer? And if you love playing fantasy football like I do, you can join my fantasy football league at Locker Live. The link down below to download the app. Go on the app, find the league titled 49ers Access, a $15 buy-in with an escalating jackpot of $450. Once we get 30 people in the league, it goes up and up and up and up. Maybe you can win $450+ by the end of the 2024 NFL season. You tell your friends, let's play fantasy football together. And hopefully you, maybe even myself, can win some money along the way. And if you are tired of looking under every nook and cranny, couch cushion or whatnot, looking through belly buttons, I don't know, of hair, or going looking through pennies and popcorn kernels under your couch for sports news about your favorite team. If you're a Jets fan, if you're a Niner fan, it does not matter. Sports Spiders got you covered. They take all the news articles from the biggest outlets, podcasts, YouTube videos, everything you want and need to know about your team. They organize it all in one place just for you by each NFL team. They also do MLB, the NBA, and everything your heart could desire. So go on sportspider.com or click that link down below to find all the latest news on your favorite NFL team in one singular place. And again, week one of the NFL season is finally here, folks. The long off season is over. We have made it to a fresh and new 0-0 record to begin the 2024 NFL season. I'm happy. I can't wait. Football is finally back. Celebrate with me by hitting that like button and watching the game on Monday night. Then come back here on Tuesday as we react to that game and hopefully celebrate a Niners 27-23 victory in primetime on Monday Night Football and start the 2024 NFL season with a 1-0 record. That's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave that review, and as always, enjoy week one of the NFL season and stay faithful.